The New Orleans Saints are getting healthier on defense, giving them the absolute opportunity to be elite in 2024. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as the Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net and the Saints analyst over at WWL TV. On today's episode of Locked On Saints, we're going to dive into how the New Orleans Saints should be managing their pass rushers in 2024, taking a heavy look at the defense today. Do they have the best cornerback group in the NFL? I'll tell you why I think so. And we're going to look at why this New Orleans Saints defense must be elite to open up the season. Can they get it done? We're going to discuss here today on Locked On Saints. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen and for being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Head over to FanDuel today. Download the app. It's the #1 sports book now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can put down $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just head over to FanDuel.com to get started. New Orleans Saints put their first injury report out today, got started with their first practice in week 1. And my biggest takeaway from practice in week 1 is that the New Orleans Saints have everything that they need to be elite on defense in 2024. And they need it. They absolutely need it. If you've been an everydayer here on the show for a long time, if you haven't been, and this is your first time catching the show, welcome. Hello. Hope that you'll stick around. I have my doubts about the New Orleans Saints offense and how long it will take for it to get under everyone's belt. I don't doubt the system. I think the scheme is good. I think all that stuff is fine. My only question mark about the Saints offense is how quickly can they get comfortable with the new scheme? It took them a long time to get comfortable with the Pete Carmichael scheme last year. That's a little bit of a concern for me going into 2024. However, if the Saints end up having their offense click right off the bat, then I think they're going to perform and surprise a lot better than I think they're going to perform, than many other people think that they're going to perform. And so for me, the big reason why I say that the defense needs to be elite is because if the defense is elite, it buys the Saints offense time and comfort to be able to maximize their new system as early as possible. Think about it this way. In order for the New Orleans Saints new offense to really work, you're going to want to be able to take advantage of the run game. You're going to want to be able to take advantage of play action. Those are two really, really important things in this New Orleans Saints new offensive scheme pioneered by new offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak. Run game, play action, right? Here's the thing. If you're losing in a game, your run game kind of gets stymied quite a bit, right? You always see that. Teams get into the second half, they're down multiple scores. They have to get away from their run game. The Saints have forced teams to do this in their most successful iterations and ventures on the field. The other side of it is that if you want your offensive line to really be able to take advantage of the full scheme and be comfortable, then you probably want your play action game working. But here's the thing. Your play action game is not going to work or at least isn't going to work as well, if you've had to abandon your run game, and if you're constantly in these sort of like 3rd and long situations where play action you're not going to call a play action pass on 3rd and 10, right? Like that's a straight drop back and pass type of a situation. Advantage the defense when it comes to the pass rushers in that situation if your offensive line isn't holding up strongly. So what does the defense have to do with all this? Well, if the New Orleans Saints defense is on and popping and they are elite, not top 10 elite, but top 3 elite, which is where I believe they're trying to get back to here in 2024, then all of a sudden, the game on the other side for the offense becomes so much easier to manage. You end up having all of your tools at your disposal because you're not playing catch up. You're not in a situation to where all of a sudden you don't have your play action game available to you. You don't have your run game available to you. And the defense helps to keep that possible by taking the ball away and giving you extra possessions over on the offensive side, by limiting scoring for the opposing team. In this case, the Carolina Panthers, as the Saints open up week 1. And then, of course, as well, getting rid of or taking away the opposing team's run game, forcing them to be one-dimensional and not be able to control the clock in that way. So those are all ways that your defense helps actually make your offense better. And when you have an offense that in this season here for the New Orleans Saints looks like it's ready to actually take advantage of the talent that it has over on the offensive side, which last year's system, I would say, did not do that at least successfully, or at least did not appear to do that successfully to the outside eye, I think is fair to say. Then yeah, you want your defense over there balling out so that your offense is in the most comfortable situation possible to be able to really utilize every bell, every whistle, every wrinkle, everything that this offense should have to offer with Clint Kubiak calling, designing, doing everything that they're doing. So I think that the partnership between offense and defense is obvious. And this is why the New Orleans Saints defense must be elite, especially early on in the season. The reason why I say early on in the season is, again, that growth, right? You want the growth for the New Orleans Saints offense. How long is it going to take for them to get comfortable with their new, all the things that we discussed a second ago? If your defense is getting the job done, you're probably pretty comfortable in your offense all of a sudden, right? No matter how new it is and everything. And so I think that's the next sort of level to this, is not only does the New Orleans Saints defense need to be elite all season because it maximizes what you could do over on the offensive side, but being elite right off the bat ends up helping you out a ton in terms of getting your new system, I'll use the phrase again, on and popping. That's how I'm feeling today. I feel like I'm on and popping. I feel like you're on and popping. I need the New Orleans Saints offense to be on and popping. And having the defense ball out early will definitely help with that. The Saints got some good news towards that today, by the way. Speaking of injury report, first injury report of the season today. Finally got one. New Orleans Saints had 2 linebackers that were limited, but hey, back at practice. That's the thing I want you to really focus on here. Pete Werner, Willie Gay Jr. Remember, Pete Werner missed a lot of time over the course of training camp, but did also get that extension in the midst of his absence, which always kind of showed you pretty good outlook in terms of like what that injury was and how Pete Werner was doing and all these other things. But he was limited. And then Willie Gay Jr. was limited with I believe it was a shoulder injury. He missed practice on the bonus practice on Monday, so it was good to see him back. Dennis Allen acknowledging that Willie Gay is going to be a big part of what they do this year, so they were very excited to have him back out on the field. He and Pete Werner were limited, but hey, they were there. Another player that was limited, but that was there, is Marshon Lattimore. New Orleans Saints cornerback Marshon Lattimore back at practice, has been back at practice for a while. So good to see him there here as the Saints get started with their week 1 prep. And then, of course, Nick Saldiveri was limited as well as he starts to work his way back. He's only been back around for a couple of practices, so I don't know if he's going to end up being, maybe inactive or maybe just a little bit limited in terms of where he is in the lineup or whatever it might be this week. It would make sense to make sure he's conditioned and in football shape and all those other things. Wouldn't surprise me to see that. The Saints had a few other players that missed practice today. That was Colin Saunders, the defensive tackle. No surprise there. We know he's going to be out for a couple of weeks. And then 2 linebackers and rookie Jalen Ford, as well as DeMarco Jackson. So this is why it was also good to see Pete Werner and Willie Gay back at practice. And then Dallin Holker was present, but was an observer throughout practice. So he still looks like he's working his way back. So that's the big thing that we're looking at here. Saints defense getting healthier, which is so funny to say. It's the week 1 game. We're already talking about, hey, they're getting healthier. It's a good thing. But you know how injuries were for them all through training camp. It's an obvious benefit to see guys at practice here as week 1 gets underway. I mentioned Marshon Lattimore being healthy and available to go. Well, Marshon Lattimore is a part of a trio that I think is the best cornerback position or best cornerback lineup in the NFL. I'll explain why as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, the one, the only, America's #1 sportsbook, the absolute place that you should be going to get in on all of the betting action. Right now, the New Orleans Saints favored against the Carolina Panthers by 3.5 points. They're also favored to win this game per the money line as well, which goes their way. So maybe you want to bet the underdog, see if you could take home a little bit of cash over on the side, put $5 down, get a little bit back for the Carolina Panthers or something like that. Or maybe you just bet the Saints against the spread or bet the spread against the Saints. However it is that you want to get into it, it's all available for you over at FanDuel. And right now is the perfect time to get started over at FanDuel because right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can put $5 down as a bet and then get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube or YouTube TV. Then with your YouTube TV base plan, you're going to be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game for those 3 weeks. All that you need is a Google account, an existing YouTube TV plan, as well as a current form of payment, and then you can cancel any time. So visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. All right, family. I might be having my questions about the New Orleans Saints offense, but I have very little questions about the New Orleans Saints defense. And a big reason why is that I believe that the New Orleans Saints have one of the best cornerback rooms in the NFL. And it's not just about the players. We got that coming up for you here as we continue on. We appreciate you very much for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day, whether you're here live checking out the show or catching it later. Appreciate you very much for being here. For your second listen today, make sure you go and check out the new Locked On NFL. It's the Madman Tyler Rowland and the Barbershop with Tony Wiggins. Double dose of NFL talk every single day. You can catch me and Tyler together on Fridays, previewing the entire weekend ahead of NFL action. Very excited about what we're doing there. So come and check us out over at Locked On NFL. All right. Here is what I see for the New Orleans Saints when it comes to their secondary. We've got question marks at safety, right? Tyrann Mathieu, is one of the starting safeties. The Saints listed Jordan Howden as their starter next to Tyrann Mathieu on the unofficial depth chart. I'll be curious to see if that ends up being the truth. I can make a real case for Will Harris having that role, so we'll see which way they go. But at corner, there are no questions. Marshon Lattimore, Paulson Adebo, Alontae Taylor, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and you dang right, I'm throwing in Rico Payton. Because Rico Payton, to me, was one of the best performing corners in the entire preseason for across the NFL. Now I know, Ross, it's the preseason. Yeah, but he's also an undrafted free agent rookie out of Pittsburgh State. Okay, so balling out in the preseason means something. So it was good for him to see all that. But I think the New Orleans Saints have the best cornerback room, or one of the best cornerback rooms in the NFL. I think they might have the deepest. The look at Marshon Lattimore and Paulson and Adebo, just as your starting corners, like if we went all the way back to the pre-slot receiver days, and you just have 2 corners out on the field, 3 linebackers, 4 defensive linemen, or 3 defensive linemen, 4 linebackers, and a pair of safeties, however it is that you want to look at it. Paulson Adebo and Marshon Lattimore would be a lot of team starters today, now, if they were on another team. I think there are probably places like maybe Houston who would make their case for Derek Stingley Jr. Completely get that. Sauce Gardner over in New York with the Jets. Of course, Patrick Surtain, who just got his new deal with the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton, happy to have another lockdown corner over with the Mountain West, the Mountain Valley State Saints over there. But I do think that the Saints cornerback room as a whole would provide a lot of starters across the entire NFL. And for me, that is something that I would look at and say, okay, that's what establishes how deep this room is. That's what establishes how good this room is. It's not just about projection or conjecture. It's about the fact that you take Marshon Lattimore, put him on a team, he's a starter. You take Paulson Adebo, put him on a team, he's a starter. Then you go to the slot corner in Alontae Taylor, who looked so good all throughout training camp. It was easily the best Saints player for me when it came to most improved player when it came to training camp for me. You put him as an outside corner on other teams, he's probably a starter. Kool-Aid McKinstry, 2nd round draft pick, probably a starter. If another team invested in Kool-Aid McKinstry, he would be a starter. I think the New Orleans Saints cornerback room is one of the few cornerback rooms in the NFL to where you can go and draft one of the best cornerbacks in all of college football who fell to the 2nd round because of an ankle injury. I think the New Orleans Saints are one of the only teams in the NFL that could draft that guy and say, all right, well, sorry, we've got starters ahead of you. They're one of the few teams that's able to do that. And I mentioned that it's not just about the players, right? So look, Marshon Lattimore, Paulson Adebo, Alontae Taylor, Kool-Aid McKinstry, and then you add in Rico Payton, who is this young, talented, fiery corner who feels that he still has so much left to show, so much left to prove. You get those 5 guys in a room, you've got a really good cornerback room. But then you get them led by Joe Woods, Marcus Robertson, Dennis Allen. All 3 of those guys, very strong secondary coaches and very strong developers. Say what you want about Dennis Allen. I understand this is a prove-it year for Dennis Allen. It's the most important year of his career, of his coaching career. Might be the last year of his coaching career. We don't know. This is an important year for him. Say what you want about him as a head coach. Say what you want about him, whatever. He is phenomenal when it comes to developing. I've been consciously not using that word so much, by the way, the word phenomenal. But Dennis Allen truly deserves the word phenomenal cornerback developer. Joe Woods, same thing. Marcus Robertson, I'll give him phenomenal defensive back developer, right? Because he has been a guy that has taken, oh my goodness. Oh, the safety over in Arizona. I can't remember his name, but Budda Baker took Budda Baker and then got him his first interceptions in his career, shot his production up big time. Then you look over as well at what he did with Charles Woodson. He's the one that helped to extend Charles Woodson's career, right? Helping him transition to safety over with the Raiders and things like that. And then now you put him in New Orleans where he's been able to get Marcus May, Tyrann Mathieu ready. He was able to get Jordan Howden ready unexpectedly in his rookie season. He was able to get Jonathan Abram ready on those last 2 games. Now all of a sudden he's got Will Harris in the building. He immediately clearly had an effect on Miller Bradford throughout the offseason process, where Miller Bradford was just getting interceptions like crazy during rookie mini camps and OTAs and all this other stuff. Like, you can see the Marcus Robertson effect. And if you want to really see it, look at the number of interceptions that the New Orleans Saints had, right, that they took back in 2022 versus the number of interceptions that they had last year, and tell me Marcus Robertson and Joe Woods did not have an impact. You can't. You can't. You can try, but you can't. There's no way. Those guys end up having a major impact on this team as well. So that's one of the reasons why I think the New Orleans Saints, when it comes to the elite level of defense that they need to show here in 2024, that they're actually in a pretty good situation here when it comes to their secondary and in particular their cornerback room. And that helps a whole bunch when it comes to building out what this offense, what this defense is going to be in terms of their status within the NFL. Having corners that can take away half of the field or their area of the field, having corners that can go stride for stride with opposing wide receivers, having a slot corner in Alontae Taylor that's fully bought in, that manages well. Remember, when CJ Gardner-Johnson was here in New Orleans, he was a great slot corner for them. He was really, really good. But remember what he struggled with. He struggled with the shifty, fast, quick guys, the Chris Godwins of the world, right? You put now Alontae Taylor in that role, fully bought in, another year of development. Joe Woods once said that Alontae Taylor's 2024, his floor is his ceiling from 2023. And his ceiling from 2023 was pretty good. He was still one of the best press man corners across the entire NFL, right? Just looking at cornerbacks in press, right? Removing the slot conversation a bit, but cornerbacks in press, he was one of the best in the NFL. And then so now you snag that, you take that, and then you put that type play in your slot, in the slot, in a quicker, faster, more reactive, good run support safety or player, not safety, but corner in the slot. And you can see where Alontae Taylor has a lot of benefit, especially in this division. So that's one of the reasons why I think the New Orleans Saints cornerback room is one of the best cornerback rooms in the NFL and should help to lead the way for what should be an elite, at least top eight defense in the NFL. I agree with that. The other thing that I'll mention very quickly too is remember that the corners aren't there to just get takeaways. Sometimes the corners are there to force the opposing quarterback to hold on to the football. That way the pass rush can get there. And the New Orleans Saints should have a much better pass rush here in 2024 as long as they manage it correctly. I'll explain the challenges and the right thing that I think is the right thing to do next as we continue on with your New Orleans Saints here on Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience, the formula for winning championships is also the same thing that helps to keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to be able to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, LED headlights, exhaust kits, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you're always going to be able to find exactly what you're looking for at ebaymotors.com. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash for all the parts that you need at the prices that you want. It's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive by visiting ebaymotors.com today. Eligible items only, exclusions apply, and eBay guaranteed fit available only to U.S. customers. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints pass rush should be exponentially better here in 2024, as long as they can answer one question on the player side. But I think the coaches are going to be tasked with something pretty big here as well. So managing that pass rush is going to be very, very important. We appreciate you very much for being here for another episode of Locked On Saints. This is our live episode. Tomorrow morning, I'll have another fresh episode for you. And in that one, we're going to take a look a little bit more at the offense. I'm doing a lot of defense talk here. So I want to go to the offense. What are my concerns for the offense? What needs to be shown? What needs to be seen? And how do the New Orleans Saints show that against the Carolina Panthers? Is actually a really easy way to convince the doubters of the offense, including myself, up against the Carolina Panthers, even though they are indeed the Carolina Panthers. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. I think there's a lot of good stuff here. All right, so the New Orleans Saints added Chase Young to their pass rush, and I think it was one of the best moves that they made this offseason. My biggest concern for the New Orleans Saints when it came to Chase Young was, what did the contract look like, right? That was going to be the big thing. Big name, former number 2 overall selection, top defensive player taken in his draft, all these other things. I thought the contract was going to have to be wild because he had a pretty effective season during his time over with San Francisco. I know his time with Washington was a bit of a wash, but really, I mean, Washington's been a wash for a while, up until they moved on from their disaster of an owner and then kind of rebranded and rebuilt that organization back from the ground up, actually got a good culture in the building, all these other things, or what we assume is a good culture in the building. So I don't really invest a lot in what we saw from Chase Young during his Washington days. I liked what we saw from Chase Young during his San Francisco days. And I thought, well, man, no way the Saints are going to be able to get him on a deal that makes sense because of the fact that, like, he performed so well on a Super Bowl competing team with the San Francisco 49ers. And I was wrong. The Saints were aided a little bit because they were the team that was okay with the neck procedure and things like that. So it was a little bit of a roll of the dice, but they also protected themselves, right? These are all, his contract is built on being active on game days or being a part of the active roster on game days. And so that's a big part of his very incentive-heavy contract. He's incentivized to stay on the field, and he's incentivized to go out there and hustle and do all the things, right? And the good news for the New Orleans Saints and the good news for Chase Young is that they may be able to maximize him quite a bit because of their ability to be able to rotate on their defensive line, having not only Chase Young, but Carl Granderson, Cameron Jordan, Isaiah Foskey, Peyton Turner. It allows you to rotate a lot of what you're doing over on the defensive side of the football all along the defensive line. My big thing for this pass rush is how the Saints find a way to walk the line between giving them enough snaps, Carl Granderson, Chase Young, Cameron Jordan in particular, right? Giving them enough snaps to make sure that they feel like they're contributing to the team, right? You don't want to have anybody out here feeling like they're not getting enough snaps or anything like that. I don't think any of those 3 guys have the ego that says that that would be an issue, but I would understand the negotiation of it, right? Because you don't want to disrespect these guys either by not having them out on the field. You know what I mean? And, you also have invested money in all 3 of these players, everything like that. Like, you also have a concerted effort as an organization to make sure all 3 of those guys are on the field. So maximizing your ability to be able to give them opportunities to the point where they don't feel like they're in a situation where they're not being utilized properly or anything like that. But then also doing the right thing that's going to help you win football games, which has to be the priority. So I think for the Saints, the best way to kind of make sure that you're walking the line between both of those lines is to not only rotate the pairings, but really lean into that NASCAR package, really lean into that 3 defensive end package that will include Cam Jordan on the inside. And then look, you can also move. Chase Young can play on the inside. Carl Granderson can play on the inside. But I think getting all 3 of them, Cameron Jordan, Chase Young, Carl Granderson, I change the order every time that I say them so that it never looks like a preference, right? But getting all 3 of those guys on the field at the same time, I think, is a really, really good way to maximize the ability in terms of what it is that they can give you, while also making sure that they're getting like the desired amount of snaps that will effectively keep them happy, right? Like, again, I don't think the ego is so much that any of these guys are gonna be like, oh, well, I'm not getting enough snaps, blah, blah, blah. But also, you don't ever want any player, especially a star player, big name players like all three of these guys are, from the perspective of this team, right? Maybe Carl Granderson isn't looked at as a star across the NFL, but he's looked at as a star on this team. All of those things to where you want to make sure that they're still getting there. You want to make sure that they're on the field, and you want to make sure you're giving them the things that end up saying to them, hey, you are still that guy for us. So I think that becomes a really big, important piece for them. And because Dennis Allen, as we mentioned, very good over on the defensive side of the football, not just very good with the secondary, but does a very good job of scheming up the pass rush, scheming up the second level pressure, and scheming up the stunts and twists and things like that are run over on the defensive line. That's another reason why getting those three guys on the field becomes so important, is because you're going to be able to run those stunts, those twists with nimble athletes, with fast athletes, with speed, with quickness, all these other things. And so I think that ends up having a big benefit for you as well. So adding on to that, because the pass rush isn't just about those three edge rushers, although they will be major contributors to what the pass rush is, but having a guy like Brian Brzee who can rush the passer pretty effectively from the inside, big. Having a guy like John Ridgeway, having a guy like Christian Boyd that maybe aren't looked at as big-time pass rushers or anything like that, they still have the ability to take up some double teams on the inside and create one-on-one opportunities for these other defensive ends and these other pass rushers. So for instance, you've got 5 offensive linemen and 4 defensive linemen on a particular rep, right? Let's say that that's the case. It's a third down. It's a third and long. You know that they're dropping back to pass. Okay. Bryce Young is going to be dropping back to pass. Let's say it that way. You want to pin your ears back as an offensive line, as a defensive line, and get after the quarterback. So you've got 5 offensive linemen, 4 defensive linemen. If one of those guys takes up 2 blockers, everybody else has a one-on-one. So let's say it's John Ridgeway. John Ridgeway takes up 2 blockers on the interior. Then all of a sudden you've got a NASCAR package of Carl Granderson, Chase Young on either side, and then Cameron Jordan in the middle. Well, now all of a sudden, Cam Jordan, Carl Granderson, and Chase Young all have one-on-ones on a third and long, with a secondary that we just talked about is elite, one of the deepest cornerback rooms in the NFL, one of the best cornerback rooms in the NFL, because they got 4 guys that would be starters on 31 other teams. Pretty good odds that one of those 3 pass rushers is going to get to the quarterback. Now, here's my question on the execution side for the New Orleans Saints defensive line. And you've heard me talk about this before, but I'm going to say it again. I'm not going to harp on it, but I'm going to say it again. You might be able to say it with me. 1, 2, 3. Can you finish plays at the quarterback? Can you get the quarterback down to the ground? That's going to be one of the biggest things. But that's on the players. That's on the execution by the players, right? So that's the big thing that I think you're going to be watching for in terms of being able to maximize this New Orleans Saints pass rush. And I do think too that because you have the strong coverage unit, it's just going to buy more and more time for those players to finish those plays. But we're going to get a pretty quick look at the New Orleans Saints and their ability to be able to A, make plays at the quarterback, and B, handle the mobile quarterback up against Carolina in week 1 with Bryce Young over there. So lots to watch, but lots of good things for this New Orleans Saints defense that I think will be and needs to be elite here in 2024. All right. We appreciate you very much for being here. Coming up on tomorrow's episode, Crossover Thursday is back. Myself, Julian Council, breaking down this matchup. We'll take a look at the biggest stories for each team and then give you the 3 things that each team needs to do in order to pull off a win. And then we'll be live again tomorrow after practice, where we'll dive into the offense quite a bit more after practice. We appreciate you very much. As always, making us your first listen of the day. Thank you for being here live or later. We appreciate you very much. Make sure you go and check out Locked On NFL, Locked On Pelicans, Locked On LSU for your second listen. Thank you for making me a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family is doing. Let me know how you're living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.